Hey everybody, this is Sean Fitzgerald from Fits of Writing, author of Bleeding the Divine. I'll be talking with author Michael Blaylock tonight, author of the book Ferryman. I would tell you a little bit about it, but I'm going to go ahead and let him do that. Okay, I am here with Michael Blaylock. He is a self-published author as of right now. I understand that he's working on a book that he hopes to release relatively soon, but he does have a work out there he'd like to discuss tonight. Mike, how are you doing tonight?
Doing all right, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I just wanted to kind of try to dive in with everything with you. Let's talk about what you've got going on, but first tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, about me, obviously I'm an author. I like to write as much as I can, but until that pays the bills. I work at a bank, and my wife and I are launching a bakery in our little town. And I'm also training to be a counselor, so I'm kind of everywhere right now.
I was a man who wears many hats. That's nice. I feel you there. Okay, well, go ahead and let's talk about when you figured out that you wanted to be an author, or at least to do that to some degree. Like, tell me a story about that point in your life.
Well, it really came from video games. A lot of us grew up playing video games, and I started liking some of the story potentials of certain games I played. And, back when, I think it was 8th grade, playing the Legend of Dragoon, and just loving how, like, as a 4-disc game, which back then was just enormous, and every little leg of the journey kind of unveils one more piece of the puzzle, and then working on a fan fiction. Remember that also, when I was 9th.
Cutting that out. Happened. We're not going to talk about that. No.
Okay. And then I worked on a fan fiction, and it was the worst thing ever written. But
that's not true either.
I actually have it somewhere still to remind me to stay humble. But I had so much fun doing it that I wrote more fan fictions, and then eventually went into original work. And I just couldn't stop. I was having so much fun creating worlds and creating stories. And that's still my thing. While I love storytelling in all forms, novel writing has this unique ability to kind of grab you by the throat and just yank you into a world. And it's just stuck with me ever since those early days of just fanficking. I just love the idea of just making something and immersing the reader in that until they are just super satisfied and delighted and want more. And I'm still getting off that high.
That's awesome. I really like the way you put that. And yeah, I remember Legend of Dragoon. I remember, kind of being inspired the same way. I appreciate that. And I think that there's a lot of stigma out there saying that you need to read a lot to write a lot. But I also am starting to hear more and more people say that a good story doesn't necessarily need to be printed on page. And yeah, I can definitely follow that. Video games inspired me as well. If we're on the subject of original works, tell us a little bit about Ferryman, where it came from and where folks can find it.
Well, Ferryman came from an idea when I was reading a book. This is this one-off character who could kill people very easily. I think he just like snapped his fingers or something and people would die. But he was just a one-off villain who ended up being beaten up by somebody else. I kind of wondered about that character. Like, what would he do if he was like the main focus? What do you do with somebody who can just kill with a thought? But then another thought came to me. What if that wasn't the bad guy? What if that was just the superpower he was born with, the ability to kill, but he wasn't evil? And so that evolved into a character study on what you do with power. Charlie Ferris is the main character, and he's got like I said, he was born with the ability to take life. And he has no dreams of world domination. He just wants to be himself, and he wants to use his powers for good. But of course, the question is how. And a lot of people in the supernatural world really don't trust him because why would you? That's just such a nasty power to have. And they think, no, you can't do anything. Sit quietly and do nothing. But he's got this heroic streak in him that says, no, I want to do some good in the world. How? And so it's really exploring that. And just like I said, it's about the exploration of power, how power doesn't necessarily corrupt.
There'd be a lot of folks who would argue that point. You see that get explored a lot with characters like Superman and things where a lot of times the goal is to corrupt him in some way, shape, or form. It's almost like you're coming up with an underdog story from the literal top of the food chain. So that's really cool.
I like that description. And as for where they can find it, it's on Amazon, Ferryman, all one word. And also my website, fencingwithink.com, has links and is also on Smashwords.
Okay, awesome. Mike has agreed to play the game Read the Book. Mike, tell me how Ferryman begins.
The first thing is one I have fun with a lot. It's Charlie, the main character, introduction to him and his powers, walking in to do a state execution, and just kind of showing off the world on like the one job he's able to have and exactly how he goes about it, his particular mannerisms, and just his character introduction.
You mentioned that the other superheroes aren't wild about his powers, so how do they react to an employment situation like that?
For the most part, they leave him alone because they also kind of wonder, is he powerful enough to kill a superhero? Can he kill one of us? Would we be able to stop him if he tried? They're not sure. So for the most part, they tend to leave him alone with kind of threats, just like, hey, we'll get you here, do this, and stay where you are. But nothing's actually been confronted yet, just because no one's sure who's going to win.
Okay. Where does the plot kind of inch forward from there?
Well, eventually something happens in which the superhero government kind of has no choice except to go to Charlie and say, hey, we hate you. Please help us.
What other superheroes are there? Are they all themed in similar manners with absolutes like death?
So a number of the characters, not all, but a number of them kind of went off of Greek mythology. The guy who can fly and shoot lightning, he calls himself Zeus. Charlie's best friend is a character who can shapeshift and become any female character that any man could desire, so she calls herself Venus. It's not throughout the entire story. There's a number of people who are a little bit different, but each one kind of has their own little quirks.
Okay. How does society react with these existing superheroes who aren't universally feared? Are they accepted? Are they in charge?
So by the time the book starts, superheroes called Evolved have been around for a while. So they're kind of been normalized. People are kind of familiar with them. They do kind of act as a sort of extension of the government, kind of a superhero league fighting good guys. And that league is kind of the authority on superheroes. And they're also doing research on how to use their powers for good. When this, a little early in the story, Charlie's listening to a radio broadcast about a Evolved who can kind of charge electrical circuits. And so they're looking at him wondering, hey, can we mass produce this power to create limitless energy? And it's just a kind of speculative thing to show this is familiar. And they're really using these powers to kind of research what good they can do for humanity, which is why Charlie's jealous that everybody gets to be treated like a gift to the world while he's treated like a curse.
Are there any other similarly persecuted Evolved?
I think that's where you're going to have to read the book.
Read the book. And Mike, if people do read your book and they like it and they want to know what you're going to be putting out here before too long, I know that you're working on at least one project, and I know that there's other ones on your website that you're kind of alluding to working on in the future. Where can people follow you on social media? Tell us if you have a website, where they can keep up with your progress and other works that you're putting out.
So, like you said, they can follow me on my website, fencingwithink.com. And that's where I post stuff about my books, but also just random blog content I have. And there's also a link to sign up for my newsletter where you can get the most up-to-date stuff. I also have 3 social media places. Twitter is at fencingwithink. Facebook is Michael A. Blaylock author. And Instagram is MAB author. Those are the 3 places I'm most likely to be.
Awesome. I will put that down in the description for anybody who wants to get there directly after watching this. Mike, I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully, maybe next time you release something, let's get back in touch and maybe we can have you back on to talk about that.
Awesome.
All right, sir. I appreciate it. You have yourself a great night.
You too, man.
Michael is actually a very old friend of mine, and it was a lot of fun to do this. Check out Ferryman when you get a moment. Leave a review for him, and subscribe to his newsletter on his website. If you want to keep up with me as I interview more authors, put out more works of my own, like and subscribe on here. Hit the notification bell. Check out my own links in the description for my website, authorseanfitzgerald.com, as well as any of my social media platforms. I am on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks so much. Have a good one.